But someone else was not about to give up like she had. Someone would not accept the fact that friends don't ever last long in this world. A pained shout from Nick snapped her out of her senses, and the man rushed forward without hesitation. Sinking to his knees, now below the hole, miraculously the ice didn't crumble around Nick, although he was deliberately choosing spots, and it seems to be more solid to stand on. Pete had mentioned that he had gone hunting with Nick once. Maybe the man had learned some of the tricks into frozen lakes or something. Or maybe he got lucky either way. He wasn't falling, and was just reaching into the frozen water with his bare hands to retrieve Luke. Time stood still as he fished around desperately, his arms reaching further into the dark abyss to grab hold of an arm, or a piece of fabric from the shirt, or virtually anything he could. Clementine's heart pounded against her ribcage like a drum, tension keeping her standing like she was, like a coward. Finally, Nick pulled back, letting out a grunt of effort as he pushed something large and pale out of the water. Luke's lips were blue, and the color had drained from his body as he curled into a fetal position, tried to push the frightened words off his tongue, but unable to. Immediately, Nick had slung Luke's arm around his shoulders and pulled him up, using all the strength he had and luck were to get on to the other side of the lake. And for once, fate had smiled on them, and they had made it to the other side, making Clementine hurry in her pace along to follow them. But by the time she crossed over, Nick was already inside the house, bundling Luke in as many pieces of clothing as he could from the backpack. Clementine was suddenly grateful that he decided to snag on so many clothes from Parker's run. Luke, are you okay?" Sarah cried, fear gripping the tone as she rushed inside with the others. The room that they were in was slightly exposed to the outside, but for the most part it was protected from the wind, and there was a staircase leading to an unfinished upstairs nearby, and many random pieces of furniture were in the making strewn about the room. "We need a fire, Sarah. He's going to freeze to death," Nick breathed, his own adrenaline clearly not diminishing yet. "I'm not letting you die," he added to Luke, who was conscious on the floor and was shivering uncontrollably. Fire, okay?" Sarah replied, looking for the adults to help. My dad never let me use matches, so does anyone have them? Please." Jane nodded, fishing out some from her pocket. "Here, just let me..." She knelt next to the fireplace, striking a match onto the box and throwing it towards the lumber already placed inside. Once a small fire started kindling, Nick dragged Luke as close as he could to it, rubbing his hands over his friend's frail form, trying to warm him up with the friction. Come on, man," he muttered, attention completely focused on saving Luke's life. Thankful, the fire seemed to warm the freezing man, and Luke sighed slightly in content. His shivers were dying down to slight tremors, while he had calmed down completely and stopped the shaking. Nick leaned back on his knees, trailing off from this hat that he had ran through his hair. Kenny whipped his head around to glare at Arvo. "What the actual frick is that? You said it was safe, you little shitbird." He then walked up to the boy, startling him menacingly. "This place is a stack of frickin' toothpicks. Bet those supplies aren't really here, are they?" Arvo didn't respond, his head lowered submissively, but the older man shoved him, making him wince in pain. "What? No does speak English?" Kenny mocked, his temper flaring up like the flames in the fireplace. Protectively, Mike thrust his way between them, meeting Kenny's eyes. "Do not, man. Leave him alone," he hissed. "It wasn't anyone's fault, and this place looks safe enough for now." "That's not what it's about, right? It's for frickin' now." "What? Mike, if there were no supplies here for little AJ, he's gonna starve, and we'll all be next. Don't give me that bullshit. It ain't doing anyone else a favor squawking at each other like chickens," Troy pointed out, the sneer on his face betraying his words. The son of the bitch was enjoying the discord, wasn't he? Jane then narrowed her eyes and smirked at him. "That's funny, coming from you of all people, rooster boy." "Oh, shut up," Troy snapped with a scowl. Kenny ignored the conversations around him, once more roughly grabbing Arvo and pushing him forward like some of the sort of the playground bully. "Start talking, kid. Now." It wasn't Arvo's fault," Sarah pleaded. "He's just hurt because... and he was scared. I was scared too," she trembled, under Kenny's gaze, fingers folding together and picking at her nails anxiously. Clementine stepped forward beside her, more confidently raised her hand to look up at the man. "It wasn't his fault, Kenny, and we all made it across. Anyway, Luke has a fire. He'll warm up and be okay." Piercing her lips, she gently placed a hand on his arm. "Kenny, please listen to me. Please." Kenny's eyes flashed with something that he couldn't quite pinpoint, but a hostile expression began to soften, and he eventually nodded, turning away from the Russian teen and towards her. All right, darling, I'm gonna go look around for those stupid supplies. I think we should all explore this place a bit, Mike added quickly, clearly still suspicious of Kenny. The other adults gave nods of their own in agreement, and it was settled. Clementine moved to join them, but found herself overcome with sudden exhaustion and wobbled on her feet a little bit. Sarah gazed curiosity at her, asking if she was all right, but she couldn't really answer before sitting back down. Tired, she mumbled, not wanting to admit across that ice took a lot out of her. Then again, with what happened with Troy, she wasn't able to get much sleep the previous night, so it all made sense. The sun was still high in the sky, probably around mid-afternoon, but she felt as if though she could sleep for hours. It's safe to take a rest, Bonnie assured her. No one will blame you, Clem. I'm staying over to make sure Luke is all right, Nick pointed out. So I'll keep watch. Sarah, you can sleep too if you want. And you both look like you're about to fall over. Sarah blushed, waving her hands in front of her face. Do I really look that tired? Well, I guess it couldn't hurt to sleep for a little bit. What do you think, Clem? She turned to her friend, questioning her gaze. Clementine didn't hesitate. The warmth of the fire nearby and the comfort of everyone being safe was luring her to sleep. She hadn't wanted herself to resist if she had to. She bobbled her head in agreement to answer Sarah, curling up in one of the pieces of furniture in the room. Night, she whispered, her voice slurred from the fatigue. Good night, Clem. Without another word, Sarah crawled near Luke on the floor, lying down closer to keep warm. She wasn't exactly close enough to touch, of course, but it was just enough comforting to have someone she trusted within reach. Nick was also even beside her, seated with his back against a piece of furniture. His eyes focused on only Luke, his hand held onto his friend's shoulders tightly, fingers gently tracing through any exposed icy skin for the man that would break into pieces. He would stop and let go. Clementine then stared at Luke for a long while, taking in the sight, and swallowed him in extra clothes, his breath shuddering, and his lips were still blue despite everything. The embers of the fireplace continued to grow larger. However, she was confident that they would keep him from freezing whenever night approached. Comforted by the feeling of the security and warmth, Clementine's eyes began to droop. She focused on Luke, even as she felt herself drift away. The image of himself sleeping by the fire was the one last thing she saw before sleep claimed her. If only that place had lasted. It didn't even feel like she had been asleep more than a few seconds before a loud shriek woke her, growls echoing nearby.